Hi, this is Dr. Georgia. I hope you find today's message a blessing in your life. We want to make sure that we continue to provide these video messages for you when you can't come to church, or for those of you who live in a different state, or we noticed recently we have a lot of people in even different countries who are tuning in. So if that is you and you can donate to us, we invite you to hit that donate button just below the message here. So thanks so much. All right, let's prepare ourselves and put your hand over your eyes. I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today.
I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today.
And now over your ears, I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today.
I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today.
Now just put your hand over your heart and extend out your arms. I open my heart to see the spiritual truth today.
I open my heart to see the spiritual truth today.
Spiritual truth that I'm working with is too long today for me to tell you, so I'm going to read it to you because I was afraid I wouldn't be able to remember it. Many of the circumstances that seem to block us in our daily lives may only appear to do so based on the framework of assumptions we carry with us. Many of the circumstances that seem to block us in our daily lives may only appear to do so based on the framework of assumptions that we carry with us. You know, the shorter version of that is that we make stuff up. We make stuff up. We make stuff up, and then the stuff we make up, we step into it, and it usually makes us smaller, not bigger. You know, fortunately, we have some great examples of people in the world that haven't succumbed to this. You know, the prevailing thought, the paradigm, the pattern of thinking is that large women can't make it in Hollywood. Fortunately, Queen Latifah didn't hear that. Fortunately, Melissa McCarthy and Adele, they didn't buy into that paradigm, and they have fabulous careers. But it's a good example of how we make stuff up, and then we live according to that which we've made up. Isn't even true. We just made it up in our life. Well, today's spiritual wisdom, this spiritual wisdom is actually written in this book, which is a phenomenal book called The Art of Possibility, Transforming Professional and Personal Life. Rosamud Zander and Benjamin Zander co-wrote it. They're a husband and wife team. She's a therapist, and he's a conductor of the Philharmonic in Boston. And it's a phenomenal book. And what they've done is they've said, look, we live in the land of possibility, what Deepak Chopra calls the land of pure potentiality. That's where we actually live, but we don't know that that's where we live. So they've designed 12 simple spiritual practices that we can use. Now look, they're simple, but they have to be practiced. That's why they're called practices. It's because we need to practice them over and over and over again, because they're counterintuitive to the way we've made the stuff up and we've stepped in the stuff. So it's not like it just, oh yeah, that's a good idea. The first one, the first one that they write about is entitled a chapter, It's All Invented. Everything is invented. And they start off with a little parable about a shoe manufacturing company that wants to increase their business. And so they send two of their best marketers to this remote village somewhere and to see if there might be some business opportunities for shoes. And the first guy writes back and he says, no business opportunity here, nobody wears shoes. The second guy writes back, fabulous business opportunity here, nobody has shoes to wear. Now we just make stuff up, and then we live within that stuff that we have made up. It's all based on our perceptions. Many of you are familiar with the famous 9-dot puzzle. The 9-dot puzzle asks us to connect the dots in this puzzle without ever taking your pen from your paper and using only 4 lines. Using 4 lines to connect the dots without taking pen from paper. Now, because our mind works off our perceptions, and most of you in this room are perceiving that as a box. So when we perceive it as a box, we try and connect those dots within that box. Not possible. So if we were to amend, now that's the only instructions that we were given was to connect the dots, 4 lines, don't take your pen off the paper. Now if we were to give you another, which you could have come up with yourself, we could have given you another instruction, which is use all of the paper you'd like to use. Using all of the paper, you can easily connect those dots using only 4 lines. But because our mind has a perception, because we made stuff up, it confined us. And here's what happens. Our perceptions define us and they confine us. They make us live a smaller life. What we see as perceived as possible, we do, but oftentimes what we run up into is every problem, every dilemma, every dead end that we run into only appears unsolvable based on the perception in which we're thinking about it. If we thought about it with a different perception, we could maybe come up with a different answer. So the first practice, everything is invented, is so powerful because we can begin to teach ourselves to ask a simple question that will open this up for ourselves. Now when I say teach ourselves, that's exactly what I mean. Because again, it's not something that's just going to come to us because we're wired to perceive things once we see them in a certain way, like that box. We're wired to think within that framework to solve the problem. So if we were to ask ourselves this question, what assumption am I making right now that gives me what I see? What assumption am I making right now that gives me what I see? And we can look at our teenager and say, what assumption right now am I making about my teenager? What assumption am I making right now about my 4-year-old? What assumption am I making right now about my bank account? What assumption am I making right now about what the doctor told me last week? What assumption am I making about my employee? What assumption am I making about my employer? See, if we can begin to train ourselves to ask this question, we can begin to see and open up the realm of possibility for everything, every relationship in our life, every project in our life, every dilemma in our life. If we would just start asking this question all day, every day, what assumption am I making right now that's giving me what I see? So we're ready to move on to the second one. The second one is we live in a universe of possibility. We live in a universe of possibility. Now we know that intellectually, but we don't act like we know it. See, the premise of this book is that there are 2 worlds. There's the world of measurement and the world of possibility. Where you want to build your mansion, where you want to retire, where you want to have your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th and 1st home is in the world of possibility, not in the world of measurement. But because we grew up in a world of measurement, that's how we know things. So we know things by measuring them and comparing them and contrasting them. We see a child and we think about that child in relationship to how other children are. And that's how we define that child. We listen to a beautiful aria and we measure, is it an aria sung by Puccini or by a local talented tenor? Which is it? Now, if we were able to see a child and just say, oh, what a beautiful child, and just look at that child without measuring, without comparing and contrasting, we would see a child filled with joy. If we would listen to a tenor singing a beautiful aria, it wouldn't matter if the aria was sung beautifully, whether it was a local person or whether it was Puccini, because we are present with the aria that is being sung. We're present with that moment in our life. We need to experiment ourselves by asking ourselves and each other, stop measuring each other. How much do you make? How much do I make? Who is better? By whom much? How dark is your skin? How light is your skin? Who is better? How fast do you run? How slow are you? Who is better? How big are you? How small are you? Who is better? We have to stop measuring each other and measuring ourselves against each other. We have to stop looking at our kids and saying, are they doing as well as my sister's kids are doing? Just begin to look at your kids and be there. We need to look this week for our thoughts, our actions, and see, do they reflect scarcity? Do they reflect survival and comparison and competition, anxiety, attachment? We want to begin to teach ourselves again. It's all teaching. We're here to do these are spiritual practices, have to be practiced. We're here to ask ourselves, not, am I measuring at this point when we're in relationship with somebody, but how much am I measuring at this point? We can just assume that we grew up in a world of measurement, so we're going to continue measuring for a while. The question is, how much am I measuring? And once you ask that question, how much am I measuring, then what happens is you'll stop measuring after a while. But it takes time. The third and final one we're going to go over today is we're going to give everybody an A. The chapter is called Giving Everybody an A. See, basically because we still live in a world of measurement, let's give everybody an A right now. Everybody who we know right now, everybody who's going to come in the future gets an A. Everybody who's gone on to the other side, they get an A. Everybody gets an A. Everybody. And when we do that, we begin to change our life. You know, giving everybody an A is a beautiful reflection of the theology of CSA. Because at CSA, we say, breathing, worthy. Breathing, worthy. Breathing, worthy. We don't ask you what you've done. Are you breathing? Then if you're breathing, you're worthy. See, we're able to look through that and to see the beauty in each person. Anybody here who's seen that movie, Victoria and Abdul, and if you haven't seen it, carve out some time, go see Victoria and Abdul. It's a beautiful movie, and you will see the moment in which they give each other A's. You will see that on the screen. You can't miss it. It's that moment that they give each other A's. In their case, it's the moment that they meet each other. And they're not servant, who's not well thought of, and queen, who is everything. They see the heart in each other. They lead with their heart. They lead with their intention of love. It's a beautiful thing to see. It's a demonstration that we can all begin to emulate every single day by giving each other A's in our life. Ben Zander, who is the co-writer of the book, is the director of the Boston Philharmonic. He's also a professor at the New England School of Music. And he said he decided to give every one of his students an A at the beginning of this class. Everybody. The only thing they had to do to get an A was to write a letter within the next week that was dated the following May, and in that letter they had to tell them how they were in line with the A that they had been given. What their life was like that was in line with the A that they were given. Now he's got a lot of stories in this good book. A lot of stories in this book. But I was touched by a young Taiwanese student who was rated 68th out of 70th violinist in his home country. 68 out of 70. And he writes this letter. I was number 68 out of 70. I came to Boston and Mr. Zander says I'm an A. Very confusing. I walk about 3 weeks very confused. I am number 68. But Mr. Zander says I'm an A student. I am number 68. But Mr. Zander says I'm an A. One day I discover I'm much happier an A than a number 68. So I decide I'm an A. an A as well. Another example in the book is from his wife, Rosamunda, who her parents divorced when she was in kindergarten. And her father left and married somebody else and started a new family and saw him very rarely. And it was a hole in her heart. And those of you who've been separated from a parent at an early age, that can leave a hole in your heart. And she decided she wanted to work with this concept of giving everybody an A. So she gave her dad an A. Now her dad had died several years before. He was 65. He committed suicide. And but she decided she was going to give him an A. She was going to decide that even though she felt he didn't love her, and how could he love her because he never spent any time with her, even though that was true, she said, I'm going to give him an A, and I'm going to assume if I give him an A, he must have loved me, because otherwise he wouldn't deserve an A. So he's going to get an A, and I'm going to assume he loved me. And so she worked with that for a while. She said, furthermore, I'm going to assume that he knew me, because that was her big wrinkle, that he had gone away and he didn't know who she was. I'm going to assume that he knows me. I'm going to give him an A, assume he loves me, assume he knows me. And she worked with that for a while. Then about a couple of weeks after she started this work, she was dusting off some books, and a letter fell out of a book, and it was dated 20 years before. And she said, I don't remember ever reading it. She said, I might have, but I don't remember it. See, before we give somebody an A, we can read something like this and not even see it. But she gave him an A. She was in a framework that he must love me. He must have known me if he loved me. And here's what the letter said. Dear Rosamunda, it was wonderful to see you. Hope you choose a profession that involves helping others, because I think you're really good at it. See, she loved this letter because he saw her in a way that she wanted to be seen the most. She's a therapist, famous therapist. She wanted to be seen by her dad in that way that mattered the most. And he did. And because of the grace that she was able to develop to give him an A, she could finally have that gift of her dad's love. See, the only grace you can have is the grace you can imagine. We need to start imagining everybody gets an A. And I promise you, it'll open your world. These are simple practices that people think, oh, they're so simple, how can that work? It works. You know, people said to Rosamunda, oh, why bother? Get over it. And you know, I've said that to people. Get over your past hurts. They're done. Get over them. But you know, if you don't have a parent's love, it's just a hole in your heart. But you don't actually get over it until you begin to work with it and see it. And she said, I wonder why he couldn't, why didn't I get to spend time with him? Why wouldn't he at least come every once in a while and spend time with me? Or bring me to his new family and let me spend time with him? Why was that? And she concluded, after a lot of prayer and a lot of thinking, he doesn't think he has anything to offer me. See, that's grace. That's grace in her life. She said once she did that, her relationship with men got a lot better because she wasn't expecting rejection. Relationship with her husband got better. Relationship with her male colleagues got better because she had healed up that rejection. How had she done it? She gave him an A. I'm going to conclude this morning with a story that I've told before, but I've never read. And I want to read it to you because sometimes when I tell stories, I forget pieces. Don't you do that? Oh, I forgot to tell him that. I don't want to forget this because it's so beautifully done. The monastery has fallen on hard times. It was once part of a great order which, as a result of religious persecution in the 17th and 18th centuries, lost all its branches. It was decimated to the extent that there were only 5 monks left in the mother house, the abbot and 4 others, all of whom were over 70. Clearly, it was a dying order. Deep in the woods surrounding the monastery was a little hut that the rabbi from a nearby town occasionally used for a hermitage. One day it occurred to the abbot to visit the hermitage to see if the rabbi could offer any advice that might save the monastery. The rabbi welcomed the abbot and commiserated. I know how it is. The spirit has gone out of people. Almost no one comes to the synagogue anymore. So the old rabbi and the old abbot wept together, and they read parts of the Torah and spoke quietly of deep things. This time came when the abbot had to leave. They embraced. It has been wonderful being with you, said the abbot, but I have failed in my purpose for coming. Have you no piece of advice that might save the monastery? No, I'm sorry, the rabbi responded. I have no advice to give. The only thing I can tell you is that the Messiah is one of you. When the other monks heard the rabbi's words, they wondered what possible significance they might have. The Messiah is one of us? Here at the monastery? Do you suppose he meant the abbot? Of course he must have meant the abbot, who has been our leader for so long. On the other hand, he might have meant Brother Thomas, who is undoubtedly a holy man. Certainly he couldn't have meant Brother Elrod. He's so crotchety. But then Elrod is very wise. Surely he could not have meant Brother Philip. He is too passive. But then magically, he's always been there when you need him. Of course he didn't mean me, but supposing he did. Oh Lord, not me. I couldn't mean that much to you, could I? And as they contemplated in this manner, the old monks began to treat each other with extraordinary respect on the off chance that one of them might be the Messiah. And on the off chance that each monk himself might be the Messiah, they began to treat themselves with extraordinary respect. Because the forest in which it was situated was beautiful, people occasionally came to visit the monastery, or to picnic, or to wander along the old paths, much of which led to the dilapidated chapel. They sensed the aura of the extraordinary respect that surrounded the 5 old monks, permeating the atmosphere. They began to come more frequently, bringing their friends, and their friends brought friends. Some of the younger men who came to visit began to engage in conversation with the monks. After a while, one asked if they might join, then another, and another. Within a few years, the monastery became once again a thriving order, and thanks to the rabbi's gift, a vibrant, authentic community of light and love began to emerge. How did it emerge? They each gave each other a name, and they began to act like it. Let's do that this week. Let's give everybody an A that we know. People at our work, people in politics. Yes, people who are. Come on. Everybody gets an A this week, okay? You ready? All right. Let's take this message into prayer. Knowing there's only one power, it's the power of love that runs right through me. And so when I accept it and release it, it simply transforms itself into a healing balm for everybody who comes near me and near you. Those people who are frightened, they feel the love. Those people who are mad, they feel the love. Those people who have pasted a smile on their face but are terrified, they feel the love. Everybody feels the love. I give thanks for that. I release this word. We're in the love.